Hello, welcome to Homeschool-Life. My name is Bobby. In this video, we're going to be talking about accounting adjustments, specifically system-generated adjustments. In other words, those that are automatically generated by the system. In order to do this, we need to be logged into the admin website. From our home page, we can access the accounting system in one of two ways: by clicking here or here. Of course, when we do that, we are located on the accounts receivable listing. Now, before automated system adjustments will function correctly, they have to be set up to do so. For calendar events, those are set up in Calendar, Settings, and under this General tab. The area that we're looking at is right here: when are credit adjustments automatically given? You have two options. When registrations are canceled by a family, you can have that turned on to allow the adjustments, or turned off so they do not automatically happen. You can also set the system up so that if an admin cancels a registration, it will either automatically allow for those adjustments, or it will not if you choose the do not allow option. The other area where automated adjustments will work is with class registrations. So let's take a look at class registration settings. So we go to Classes, Settings, and again, this is under the General tab of Class Registration Settings. And if we scroll down, the question again is, when are credit adjustments automatically given? And once again, you have the option of either turning on or off the automated adjustments if a parent cancels a student from a class, or if the system automatically cancels a student because of insufficient numbers in a class. And you also have the option to turn on or off the automated adjustments if an admin cancels a class or deletes a student from a class. So in order for the automated adjustments to work, these options need to be turned on for both calendar settings and for class registration settings. Now, one really important thing to keep in mind as I return to the accounts receivable listing, one really important thing to keep in mind is that the way that automated adjustments work depends entirely on whether the accounting category for the invoice in question is a full payment accounting category or a partial payment accounting category. If you're not familiar with where these options are set up, this is in your accounting settings. This section right here, every category that you used when an invoice is created is either in a partial payment pool or a full payment pool. Those are located here in accounting settings. The 5 in gray here are defaults that are available with the system. These remaining ones here are customized categories that have been set up by this group. If you're not familiar with how partial payment and full payment accounting categories work, I would highly recommend that you watch the accounting introduction video, because to really understand how adjustments work and how credits work in the case of cancellations, you have to really understand the different accounting categories, whether they're partial payment or full payment. So let's return back here. So let's take a look first of all at how the automated adjustments work in full payment accounting categories. These categories would include registration and renewals, signups, CRRP for class registration, or there's also a category called Other that a lot of groups use. And again, before we get too far into this, keep in mind that the option for the automated adjustments to occur must be turned on in class settings or in a calendar settings. And in this case, we've already confirmed that they are indeed turned on. Okay, so the first thing I want to take a look at is I want to take a look at what happens if a cancellation occurs and there is an unpaid invoice for that event or class. So let's take a look here at the account of the Gordon family. And I'm going to look at their invoice and payment details so that we can find an unpaid invoice so we can see what happens when we cancel a class. So let's take a look at this Ancient Civilizations class right here. So we have Joy Gordon enrolled in the Ancient Civilizations class. This invoice is not paid. You can see that here from the invoice status. And if we were to scroll down here, we could confirm that there is no payment listed here for that particular class. So if this student is canceled from the Ancient Civilizations class, let's take a look and see what happens. So let's go over here to classes, and let's take a look at this Ancient Civilizations class, and let's look at the roster. And let's look at the Gordon family. Here's the Gordon family. Joy Gordon is the student. At the current time, she is a signed up student. So if we cancel this class for her, change the status to canceled, and we save the changes. If we go back now to that particular student, to the family, and we take a look at what happened, here's a couple things that happened. The first thing you'll notice is that the invoice for that class is now marked ADJ in the paid status. It is no longer open for payment. The other thing that happened was, now you will notice that there is, in the adjustments section down here, there is a system-generated adjustment record for that class, for that student. And you'll notice that in the invoices column here, there is an invoice icon. If you click on this invoice icon, this will show you which of the invoices, and keep in mind it was an unpaid invoice, which of the invoices was closed as a result of this adjustment. Returning now to the accounts receivable listing for the Gordon family, just a quick review. The two things that happened when the system issued the adjustment on the unpaid invoice. The invoice was marked ADJ and is no longer open for payment, and an adjustment record was created with an invoice icon showing in the invoices column of the adjustments record. Now let's look at a completely different scenario. So that, of course, was what happens when there is an unpaid invoice. So what does the system do if there is a paid invoice for an event cancellation? So let's take a look at the Brenner family, and let's look at this event, To Kill a Mockingbird. Here's the mother signed up here, and here are the children signed up here. Notice that each of them shows a paid status of yes. So if this cancellation occurs after the family has already paid for the invoice, let's take a look at that. So let's go out to the calendar. Let's pull up that specific event. Take a look at the roster. And let's change the status for Mary. Let's change her from a signed up to a canceled status and save the changes. If we return back to that particular family now, the Renner family, and we find out what happened, we scroll down to the adjustments. What we see now is an adjustment record here, but notice in the invoices column, there is no invoice icon. Well, that's because the system could not close an invoice by issuing this adjustment. It was already paid. So the system just writes out the adjustment record. And at this point, the admin would need to decide, okay, what do we do with this? They may be due a refund or a credit because they had already paid for this invoice when the cancellation occurred. Some groups may have a no refund policy or perhaps a no refund policy after a certain date. In that case, maybe they're not due a credit or a refund, but this is something that the admin can decide. In the event that the admin decides that a refund might be due, this refund would be issued outside of our system, maybe by PayPal, perhaps a check, or even cash. Then the refund would be documented in their accounting section here using a manual refund adjustment. There is a video on manual refunds and payment reversals that goes into specific details about how to do that. If, however, the admin decides that this cancellation occurred maybe after a specific deadline and the family is not due the credit, this adjustment could be deleted. And the family account would not even show the credit at all. Now, there is another type of situation where a paid invoice needs to be considered, and that is in the event of a class cancellation when there's already a payment on an invoice. One of two things is going to happen. If the invoice for the canceled class had a due date prior to the date of the cancellation. In other words, let's say that the due date of this invoice was back in the beginning of the school year, maybe in August. And if the family had paid that invoice clear back in August, the cancellation now occurs perhaps in the month of March. Most of the school year has already passed. So the system will not issue an adjustment at all on a paid invoice. And that's because a lot of groups, if it's 6 months or 7 months down the road, the student has already finished the majority of the class. So perhaps they would not issue any kind of a credit or a refund. But if the cancellation occurs and the due date of the invoice is in the future, it's going to function very similarly to what we just looked at with the event cancellation. So let's take a look, since we're on the Brenner family, we'll take a look at one of their children. We'll take a look at Aiden Brenner, and we'll take a look at the Ancient Civilizations class. Here it is right here. So we have this student signed up for Ancient Civilizations. We have noticed here that it is a paid invoice. It has a yes in the paid status. So this has already been paid for. So if the family cancels this student from the class, let's take a look and see what happens in this case. So we go out to the class, we go to the roster, and we cancel Aiden from the class and save it. We return back to the specific family. And what we're going to see is exactly what we saw with the event cancellation. We do have an adjustment record right here. But again, notice there is no invoice icon that is showing for this adjustment record. Again, that's because the invoice for this cancellation was already paid. So the system cannot close an invoice. So what it does is it writes the record out minus the invoice icon. Again, this would be an indication to the admin that perhaps the family would be due a refund or a credit. And that would be up to the admin to decide. Now you can issue a credit to another open invoice, but we're not going to get into that in this video. There will be a discussion of that in the video on manual adjustments. So if you're interested in how to do that, you'll want to view that manual adjustments video. So let's move on now to partial payment accounting categories and how the adjustments are generated automatically by the system in these partial payment categories. Note that the option must be enabled, as we talked about before. and we know that is the case because we set it up earlier in this video. So what happens when there are invoices in partial payment accounting categories and a cancellation occurs? So let's take a look again. We're on this Brenner family. Here is a couple of partial payment invoices for driver's ed, one for Courtney and one for Allie. Now, you know they're partial payment because of two things. First of all, their CR is the name of the invoice. Also, if you look in the paid status here, there is an NA. Well, you might be wondering why that is. That's because with partial payment invoices, payments and adjustments do not apply to specific invoices. They apply to the entire balance of all the invoices in that category. So the paid status is always going to be not applicable because a payment is not applied to specific invoices. This is discussed at length in the accounting introduction video. So when a cancellation occurs, there will be an adjustment record created, and we'll take a look at what happens with that. First of all, let's make sure that we look at their outstanding balances and we locate the CR outstanding balance, which is right here. Now keep in mind that was two driver's ed invoices that were $350 a piece, which of course results in a $700 total balance. Okay, so the total balance in the CR category for the teacher, Melissa Walters, is $700. So let's jump over here to our classes and let's look at the driver's ed roster. And let's cancel one of the students in that family. Here's Allie and here's Courtney. So let's go ahead and just cancel Allie. And let's save the changes. Let's go back to our accounting tool and back to the family. Now, the first thing we're going to notice, if we look just at the outstanding balances, is that in that CR category, notice now that the total balance in the category is only $350. Well, that's because we just canceled one of the two $350 invoices, resulting in basically a reduction in that category. So let's go over and look at the invoice and payment details and see what happened. Scrolling down to the adjustments, now we can look down here and see that indeed, here is the cancellation for Allie from driver's ed. Notice it's in the CR accounting category. Notice again, there's no invoice here. It's not because it was either a paid or an unpaid invoice. It's because it's in the CR category. And again, payments and adjustments do not apply to specific invoices. They apply to the overall balance of all the invoices in that category. So here's the $350 adjustment. Again, you go back and look at the balance in the CR category. It has been reduced from $700 down to $350. If an admin were to decide that there was no credit due for some reason, maybe this happened beyond a deadline, the way to resolve that would be just to delete that particular adjustment record. And once you delete that adjustment record, and you go back and you refresh your screen, you would then see with the outstanding balances that it's back up to $700 again. Now, keep in mind with the CR category or with other partial payment categories, once that adjustment record is written by the system and the balance of the CR category is reduced, that family would not be due any kind of a refund because the system has already applied that credit to the balance in that accounting category. So there would be nothing else that the admin would need to do. Now, there is one exception to that, and that is if the adjustment or the cancellation results in a credit in the accounting category, that might necessitate the admin providing a refund. That would happen if the adjustment is more than the balance in that category. So let's take a look at an example like that. Let's go to the Jorgensen family. If we take a look at the Jorgensen family and look at their outstanding balances, right now it only shows that they have invoices that are due in the CRRP category, which is a full payment category. So they have $125 of invoices due in the CRRP category. There is nothing due in the CR category, in class registration, partial payment category. Well, that's because they have already paid several times toward that balance, and the balance is now zero in the CR category, class registration. So if there's a cancellation in the CR category, well, let's watch what happens this time. So again, we have the Jorgensen family. Let's go to the classes, and let's take a look at the driver's ed roster. And let's find the student Alicia Jorgensen here, and let's cancel her. Now if we return back to the accounting tool and go back to the Jorgensen family, now what we're going to see is going to be different. Now we have a credit in the CR category because there was a zero balance before, because she had paid all of the, paid toward all of those invoices. She had paid the entire balance off. Thus, there was a zero balance. Now we've canceled the class. Now there's a $350 credit. Now notice also something here that is kind of confusing to some people, is why do we have a $225 credit on the account when we have these two open invoices here for $125? Well, the reason is because we have a credit in the CR account balance, and we have these that are open. So if you take the credit of $350 and you basically add to it the $125 that is due, that is a net result of a $225 credit. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But with that situation, we're going to see right here is our adjustment of $350 because we canceled Alicia Jorgensen from the driver's ed class. Now, this is where the admin would have to make a decision. Do we refund this family the $350 because they are clearly owed the $350? They have already paid for it, and then they canceled it. Or another option would be to leave the credit on the account. Leave that $350 credit on the account. As the family signs up for future classes in the CR accounting category, that credit will just remain on the account, and as they sign up for additional classes, the credit will apply to the balance of the additional invoices that are created. So that's another option, is to leave the credit on the account, and CR invoices generated in the future would, the balance would be negated by the $350 credit. Okay, one final thought as we look at this particular account. And again, this is an area of confusion a lot of times. Notice there are credits here in the CR category. This credit will not cross over and close out the open invoices in a full payment category. This will never happen. The balance here will reflect the fact that there is a credit, but it will not close out these invoices. These types of credits can be applied manually by an admin user, but we will not cover that in this video. For more information about that, please view the video called Accounting Manual Adjustments. If you still have questions about this or any other subject, please visit the admin homepage, Help Center, located here, where you will find videos on a variety of topics. You can also visit the technical support area of your homepage and create a ticket. This concludes the Accounting System Generated Adjustments video. Thank you for watching.